This is the Ronin from Springfield Armory. It is a 9mm 1911 and it's a joy to shoot. Welcome back to the channel. You're watching Sawtooth Tactical, and this is the Springfield Armory Ronin 1911 chambered in 9mm. And if you've been following the channel for any length of time, you know how much I love 1911s. I've said that many times on this channel. My favorite handgun that I own is a Springfield Prodigy double stack 1911. But before I got into the double stack game, I owned actually 3 other Springfield single stack, the regular 1911s. And this is the one that I kept. I've had it for about 2 years. You might remember an initial video in which this gun had lots of problems, and we will talk about that. But it runs perfectly these days, and I've got good things and bad things to say about it. So if you're interested in this 1911, make sure you're subscribed, and let's begin. If you've been watching my channel for any period of time, you know how much I love 1911s. Well, I've owned quite a few by now, but this one is my favorite by now. I'm sure there will be more. Although single stack, not double stack, but man, it's just easy to shoot 1911s well, even with no red dot. You know, iron sights work great. They point well, they shoot well. Springfield Armory has been known for a very long time to make very high quality, mid-tier production 1911s. Now, at around their highest end is like their TRP line, but that's still a production 1911. It's not the same as like a Wilson Combat or a Les Bear, but it's also not the same as a T-Sauce or something like that. They are American made. I know that Springfield makes a lot of their striker fired guns in Croatia, but their 1911s are made in the USA. And most of them, at least their full size ones, have forged steel frames, slides, and barrels. Some of the smaller ones have the forged frame or forged slide and barrel, but an aluminum frame. This one has a steel frame. This is a full-size government 1911, meaning that it has a 5-inch barrel. And it is very much a classic 1911 in a lot of ways. It has your standard barrel bushing, not a bull barrel like they put on the Prodigy there. It is a single stack, so this is the standard magazine that it comes with, and it only comes with 1 magazine, and it's a 9-round magazine. But I also have a bunch of these Wilson Combat 10-round magazines, and they run very well in it. Now, I've also said on the channel many times that the only thing that I don't really like about the 1911 is the limited capacity that you get with a single stack magazine. But at least when it's chambered in 9mm, you get a couple more rounds than you do with a 45 ACP 1911. But is it sacrilege to own a 1911 in 9mm? Quick word from this video's sponsor. I've been using Aura now for a couple of months. I know you guys have seen it in my videos if you've been watching, and it's a product and a service that I really actually believe in at this point. It has totally stopped me from getting spam calls. Now, data brokers are a real thing these days. Scammers, spammers, all this stuff. I've been trying to sell a pickup truck lately, and at first, all I was getting was scammers. Well, Aura took care of that, and I'm not hearing from the scammers anymore. Unfortunately, I still haven't sold the truck, but I've got a lot of examples like that. In fact, the place where I work just recently got scammed, and we lost out on a whole day's worth of revenue. Well, Aura can stop things like that from happening. They search the entire internet for anywhere where your information is being sold to people, and they submit opt-out requests on your behalf, which takes care of your information being out there. It clears you up. so that you stop getting spam calls, you stop getting scammers. There are people out there these days whose whole career is just scamming people out of their money by finding their information on the internet. And as sickening and as sad as that is, it's a reality. And for only $12 a month, you can stop them from being able to take advantage of you. If you use my link, which is the first link in the description, aura.com/sawtooth-tactical, you get to try it out free for 2 weeks. And then you can decide if it's something that you still want to stick with. But Aura is pretty confident that you'll stick with it, and that's why they give you that 2-week free trial. $12 a month after that is a really good deal for all of the different things that you get with Aura. I've been sticking with it for a few months. I'm really happy with it. I respect my privacy and I respect yours. The very first 1911 that I ever had was a Springfield Armory 1911. It was their Defend Your Legacy edition mil-spec 1911. Very much the classic looking 19. In fact, it looked a lot like this Colt Commander here, although it was a government length, not a commander length, and it was chambered in 45 ACP. This Colt is actually a 9mm just like this is. But what I realized after owning that gun for a while and it having, these very, very basic features like this Colt does, that I wanted some more modern features on my 1911. So I sold it and I used that money, plus some more obviously, to upgrade to the Springfield Ronin. And what the Ronin has that mil-spec 1911 doesn't is a few things. For one, it has an extended thumb safety, and it's a very good safety. Very tactile, very just solid when you put it on fire or on safe. Much more so even than the more expensive Prodigy. This safety I really like. It also has a longer skeletonized trigger, a skeletonized hammer, a longer beaver tail with a memory bump on your grip safety. It's got front and rear slide serrations. It's got, sights where it just has iron sights. There is no optic cut on this gun, but it's got the ledge so that if you wanted to, you could rack it with one hand. And you see there, this thing's chambered in 9mm. That slide moves pretty easily. Again, not nearly as slicked up as the Prodigy, but I've also had some work done to that one. It has a front fiber optic sight, and it's got 20 lines per inch checkering on the back strap. It came with these rosewood grips originally, which I think look really good, especially with the two-tone, where you've got the stainless frame here and the blued slide. But Lock Grips, who actually happened to be the very first company in my YouTube career that sent me out free product for review, they sent me these grips. In fact, they let me pick which grips I wanted for whatever pistol that I had, and I had just got this Springfield Ronin, and they had tons of different 1911 grips. I picked these ones because I thought it would look good with the two-tone, and I think it does. But more than just the looks, the grip is much, much better than these wooden grips are. I really feel like I have a very, very solid grip on this gun. Even with the smooth front strap there's no checkering or any kind of texture on the front strap, but it doesn't seem to matter when I'm shooting. With these Lock Grips, the texture on the back strap or the mainspring housing, and just the fact that it's chambered in 9mm instead of 45 ACP, it has very soft, very manageable recoil, and it's just a really easy gun to control. Now, a big thing about the Springfield Ronin, and one of the big reasons that I got it, is the looks. It really did catch my eye when it was in the case at my local gun store, Guffey's Gun and Pawn. I'd been thinking about upgrading to a more modern 1911 at the time, because I just love 1911s. I love the way they shoot. I love the way they look. And I just happened to be in there one day and I saw this. And the two-tone where it's got this stainless steel frame where it's bead blasted on the rounds, but smooth on the flats. And then it's got this blued slide that is the same, where it's like a mirror shine on the flats and bead blasted on the rounds. I just thought it looked absolutely amazing. And I've had this thing for 2 years now. You could see some wear on it. I mean, there's some things, it's got some holster wear. Because I have used it. I use my guns. I shoot them, and I shoot them a lot. And I put another 100 rounds through this today without a single malfunction, by the way. But we will talk about the break-in period because it did have a significant break-in period. But I actually think that once I added these lock grips, that actually improved the look of it. Now, I do think that these rosewood grips look beautiful on this gun, especially with the two-tone. And it's a very classic look. But also, a lot of people have that. This is one of their popular models. And the lock grips kind of updated the aesthetics of it, made it look just a little bit more modern, but mainly it really just made it so much grippier and so easy to hold on to. But again, 9mm 1911, very manageable recoil anyway. It's got the longer length of pull trigger on it there, and it's got your skeletonized hammer and trigger. Again, like I said, extended beaver tail, memory bump. The safety feels really good on it. It's got all of the modern features that you want, including a great set of sights with a fiber optic front and the 2 white dot rear. I really like that it's got front slide serrations because even though this gun doesn't have an optic, most of my pistols do, and so that is how I am used to running my slide at this point, is from the front. So those front slide serrations do get used quite a bit. It's got a forged steel barrel, again 9mm, with a barrel bushing, and it breaks down like your standard GI 1911. It doesn't have a full-length guide rod, and it also only has a single-sided safety. It is not ambi. But I think it's absolutely beautiful, and it shoots really well. Let's take a look at what the trigger pull's at. We're going to do some trigger pull tests on this 1911 because one of the main reasons that you buy a 1911 is for the trigger. And this one is no different. It has a really good trigger. Now, is it as good as the 2.5 pound pull that I've got on my tuned Prodigy? No, but it still is a 1911. It's still very crisp and really good, but it's just a little bit heavier. Let's see what it pulls at. 4.6 pounds. We'll do a couple of trigger pulls just because sometimes behind the camera I don't get the most accurate reading. 4.2, because it's just not as easy to do as it is when I'm not behind the camera. 4.2. So that's about what I thought it was going to be at, was around 4, a little over, between 4 and 4.5 pounds, which is a nice duty trigger pull for a 1911. It's not super light. It's not going to scare a new shooter, but as you can see, very little take up, standard, just like every 1911 should be, and extremely crisp with nice reset. It pushes your finger right back out to the wall. It is a very nice trigger, a little more than 4 pounds like we saw, and it's just a nice looking 1911. It's got all the features that I want in a 1911. Now, a magwell would be nice. I do notice myself on reloads being a little bit slower with this gun than some of my others. With the single stack magazines, they don't taper like double stack magazines do. But you know what? This isn't really the gun that I use as my defensive handgun, although I definitely could. Just with the limited capacity and stuff, I don't. This is more of a range toy for me. And so if the reloads are a little bit slower, it's not the end of the world. Before we get into how this thing shoots, I do want to talk about the elephant in the room. Well, maybe. If you've been following my channel for at least the last 2 years, then you probably know that when I first got this gun, it didn't run. And when I say it didn't run, like, it didn't run. In fact, it was extremely disappointing. I'd never bought a gun that had so many problems. The funny thing was, so the very first day that I took this thing out, I went out to shoot it. I actually had a friend of mine's CZ Shadow 2, And I was going to compare the two of them because they're both, he has a single action only Shadow 2, the one that I really want. It's an incredible pistol. And I had literally gotten this gun that day. And so I wanted to compare two, full size, single action only 9mm pistols. There's a lot that a 1911 and a Shadow 2 have in common, although the Shadow 2 has a lot more capacity. And that day, this gun ran perfectly. It was the first day I got it, and it felt just so good. I was really, really happy with it. And in fact, so happy with it that I compared it favorably against the Shadow 2. Now, I do think that the Shadow 2 is probably a little bit better of a gun than a standard 1911, just because double stack capacity. But as far as shootability, they're both very easy to shoot well. But I really thought that this was a great pistol. And then I decided that I was going to do a full video on it, like a first shots, obviously second shots, but the first real video on it the very next week. And I went out and I couldn't get through a whole magazine. In fact, not even that. I was lucky if I got 2 or 3 rounds in a row before the thing malfunctioned. And I was getting mostly failure to return the battery, failure to chamber the round. But I was even getting like stovepipes. I was getting failures to eject, where I'd get a dead trigger and I'd wreck the slide, and then it would chamber the next round if I was lucky, or sometimes it would eject, but kind of only half chamber the next round. I'd have to push it into place. And it was really frustrating. I tried to shoot 100 rounds that day, and it took forever to shoot that 100 rounds. And I filmed it all because I was going to make a video. And in fact, I did make a video, but it wasn't the video that I wanted to make. The video was titled something like Beautiful Gun, Major Problems, because it just didn't work. And I was extremely disappointed. As you can see, my favorite place to shoot finally opened up again for the year. Winter is over, which means that shooting season, well, you've seen that I do shoot in the snow in the winter, but shooting season is upon us. So I went home, I cleaned it really good, checked everything, made sure everything was good, took it back out. It did the same thing. I did that a couple times, and the thing just didn't want to really run. And so I bought a Dremel. I didn't own a Dremel before that. And what I did is that disconnector in there, I polished the top of that. I polished the underside of the slide there, right? Like, I don't know if you could see, but the bottom of the slide where it picks up the round and where it slides over that disconnector, because it seemed like that was a big part of the issue. And still you could see it kind of hangs up on that disconnector a little bit sometimes, although it's not a problem with the gun running anymore. It's just something I can notice sometimes. Yeah, it's not even every time anymore. But that seemed to be a big part of the problem. And so I did that polishing, and then I cleaned it and oiled it again one more time. And slowly over time, I'd go out and I'd shoot 100 rounds, and I would get less malfunctions. And then I would get less malfunctions. And then it would get through a whole magazine, but maybe not the next magazine. And this went on for a little while. And then eventually it just broke itself in and it started running perfectly. But it took many hundreds of rounds. I would say close to 1,000 rounds, I bet, before this thing became reliable. And in fact, it was a real bummer because even once it did start running reliably, I didn't feel like I could really trust it because it had had so many problems in the beginning. And that really bothered me because even if it's a gun, at the time, this was my main duty pistol. When I say duty, I'm not a cop, I'm not law enforcement, military, but you know what I mean, duty size pistol, a defensive pistol, and I carried something else. And so that wasn't really the role that I bought the 1911 for. But at the same time, I want every gun to be reliable because you never know when that might be the one you have on you and a situation arises. I don't know. You just want your guns to run. And even once it started running, I just didn't feel very confident with it. I felt very confident shooting it because it shoots great and it makes you feel like a good shooter because it's a 1911 chambered in 9mm. And that was part of what I thought might be the problem. I'd owned two 45 ACP 1911s before this one, and both of them worked perfectly. And they were both Springfield 1911s also, the mil spec and the TRP. And they worked great. So then I was thinking, maybe John Moses Browning's 1911 wasn't meant to be chambered in 9mm. But there's tons of 9mm 1911s out there, including 2011s, and they all seem to work. I've always had a real affinity for 1911s. I love the classic lines. I love the grip angle, the way they shoot. I think that John Moses Browning really got it right over a century ago. And Springfield Armory makes a lot of good 1911s. And while this one did have a bit of a rocky start and a long break-in period, sure seems to run well now. The thing is, I've owned this gun for 2 years now, and I can't remember the last time I had a malfunction now. The thing runs absolutely perfectly now. It's 100% reliable, and it has been for a long time. But it did take a little work with the Dremel, and it took, $500 worth of ammo or something to break it in. Well, I was in COVID pricing ammo. Maybe $300 worth of ammo these days. It took about 1,000 rounds, I think, to break this thing in. But once it did, this is a really nice gun to shoot now. As you can see, it's one of my only guns that doesn't have an optic. In fact, it is my only pistol without an optic besides this .22 long rifle revolver. This is my dad's 1911. So, just in case you wanted to argue in the comments because you saw one without an optic. But most of my pistols have optics. And I love shooting with a red dot. But it's really nice sometimes to go out and shoot this and remind myself that I can shoot iron sights just fine. That you can shoot iron sights pretty quickly if you want to. That you can shoot iron sights from pretty far away if you want to. Although, to be fair, I can shoot faster and at a longer distance with that than I can with this. But this gun does just shoot really well. Being a full-size, a government 1911, all-steel gun, chambered in 9mm, it really is very soft shooting, and it's really pleasurable to shoot. I don't know if that's the right word, but if you shoot a striker-fired gun, I don't care which one it is, any striker-fired gun, even this M&P 2.0 full-size, which I feel like is a relatively soft-shooting 9mm pistol, compared to this, that actually feels harsh. This gun really soaks up recoil really well. It just feels good to shoot. And it's really easy to control. And your sights, you can literally just, every time your front sight comes right back down inside those rear sights, you can pull the trigger again, and you can pretty much guarantee yourself to hit the target. Now, of course, when I say that, I did miss a couple times today. And not to make any excuses, but my target stand did break when I get out there. I had it set up against a chair and a tire that I found at the range, but that's not a good excuse. I'm just a shooter that misses sometimes, like many people are. But if you do your part, this gun will do its part, and it'll feel good doing it. It's really a fun gun to shoot. I think that everyone should own a 1911. It is my favorite pistol design to this day, or derivatives of it. This Prodigy is my favorite pistol that I own. I'd really love to get a staccato. Really love to get a really high-end 2011, but I mean, now we're talking about the same price as Nods, and it's hard for me to justify that if I was going to spend that money. I'd rather spend it, I think, right now on night vision because I already have something like this. But I do want to get a staccato. I just love the 1911 platform. And a real classic single stack 1911, especially a government length one. God, it brings something out in me when I shoot it. It puts a smile on my face. So do I recommend the Springfield Ronin 1911? I do, cautiously. So like I said, I did have some major problems at first. And I put out that video because I do have to be honest with my viewers. And it hurt me to do it. Because I just spent a bunch of money on this gun. I was really excited about it. And then it didn't work. And that was a real bummer. Because the video I wanted to make that day was going to be a video telling everybody how good this gun was, and instead it was a video about how this gun doesn't run. Well, it does run now, but like I said, it took a long time to get it there. At this point, it shoots really, really good, and I love shooting it. And I've gotten I still get comments on that video from people telling me that they were looking into getting the Springfield Ronin, and then they watched my video and they decided not to. And that bums me out a little bit because I think maybe I just got one that had problems. I can't imagine that they all come out of the box that way or it would be very well known. But 1911s can be that way. They're not like a Glock or an M&P. You know, they might take some work to get them working perfectly. And they do take more maintenance. You have to, I clean my 1911s after every time I shoot them. I oil them liberally. It's the only liberal thing that I do. But you know what? Even that. So because of the experience that I had with this, when I got my Prodigy, and because I saw what other people were going through with the Prodigy, and a lot of it was very similar to what I went through with this, I thought I was going to have those same issues. And the Prodigy ran reliably from day one. And so it's hard to know. I do know this. Springfield does make a good 1911. They have lots of different models. They've got their loaded models, their Garrison. They've got their, their very basic mil-spec ones. They've got these Ronins. They've got their Ronin EMP, which is like a carry size Ronin with a aluminum frame instead of a steel frame, so it's not so heavy to carry. They've got their Prodigy series. They've got their TRPs. They run the gamut from like entry level to pretty dang nice for a production gun. And for the most part, I only hear positive things. And for the most part, I've only had positive experiences. If you include the Prodigy, I've had four Springfield 1911s. And this Ronin's the only one I've had issues with. But it doesn't give me issues anymore. The thing runs great. And even with these other pistols with optics and lights and all that on them, modern pistols, I still really, really love to go out and shoot this one. And so I do recommend it. But like I said, I recommend it with caution. And if you do have issues with it and you get one of these, reach out to me. I'll explain to you exactly what I did to get mine running, because it really didn't take a whole lot of work on my part with the Dremel. It was mostly just shooting the absolute shit out of it, putting rounds through it that got it to where it is now. It really does seem to like 124 grain. That's pretty much all I run these days. I just stock. I've probably only got 1,000 rounds left, but I like 124 grain. It works well in a lot of these pistols. And, it's loaded to NATO spec. And so it's closer to what the recoil will feel like with, like plus P hollow points or something than like a 115 grain bullet will. So I just run 124s, but this gun really does like the 124s. So does the Prodigy there. But it's just a good looking gun, and it's really fun to shoot. I don't know if you guys have noticed throughout the video all the clicking, but it's something I just can't seem to help myself with whenever I've got a 1911 in my hand, especially one that has such a positive feeling safety. And in fact, this one is the reason that I'm going to replace the ambi safety on my Prodigy, because it doesn't feel as good as this one does. This gun does feel very well made. It's very solid. There is no play really at all between the slide and the frame. I mean, there's a little bit, enough to make the thing run, Maybe that was part of the reason that it had issues at the beginning. You know, the tolerances are pretty dang tight on this thing. But I really like it. I think it looks good. I think that everyone should have a 1911 in their collection. Most modern guns with the tilting barrel Browning action kind of are descendants of the 1911, and we owe a lot to John Moses Browning and his timeless, classic, but now modern design. I think that he was an absolute genius, and the 1911 is only one of his genius designs, but it is one that I have a lot of appreciation for. And I think that everyone should own a 1911. Every gun owner should own a 1911. And if you want to get into a pretty good one without getting to the high-end custom hand-fitted really expensive market, I think that Springfield makes a really good production 1911. And the Ronin isn't their only model. They've got, like I said, you can go check out their website. They have got a ton of different 1911s, and a lot of them look really good. I just think the 1911 looks great. It's a really aesthetically pleasing pistol, but it's also a very good feeling pistol to shoot. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Please share it with anyone that you know that is a 1911 lover. And let me know down in the comments if you have a Springfield 1911, and let me know how yours runs and if it needed a break-in period. I would love to know. From Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.